It is said that the average Australian will experience between 5 and 7 career changes in their lifetime. It's an interesting thought that our future careers could be completely different to what we're practicing or training for today. In this episode, I visit Three Rivers Brewing Company and meet Mark Rivers, owner and head brewer. Mark wasn't always a brewer. In fact, he started as a geophysicist. But his science background and previous experience created the perfect skill set for his current career. It paved the way for some of the things that make his business so unique.
We're a small batch brewery. We produce about 1,000 litres of beer every time we do a brew, and we're brewing about once a week, which makes us a 50,000 litre brewery. We tend to focus on traditional kind of beers, so we're the least trendy hipster kind of microbrewery that you've ever seen. We make old-fashioned German beers, British beers, Irish ales, that kind of stuff. We can do more popular American pale ales and IPAs as well, but we're known for our more sort of traditional historic approach to what we do. We've kind of now formed this little community where people who haven't been able to get this kind of beer for the last 20 years have finally found beer that they grew up with in London or Ireland. We also engage a lot with a lot of other community groups, so we employ people with disabilities here. We've got a very strong link with BizLink. Really, originally I was qualified as a geophysicist. I quickly turned that into an environmental science qualification and spent about 25 years working in natural resource management, catchment management, and developing sustainable farming systems. When I was working as a research professor at UWA, the centre that I worked for closed down and I was moved sort of sideways. And that happened at the same time as I won the James Squire Trophy for the best amateur brewer in the state, because I've been a home brewer for a long time. We've been toying with the idea of opening a little brewery, and that was kind of before they were very, very popular. So I made a jump. I went from the academic life to this one. I'm still using a lot of the science and problem-solving skills that I used to use professionally as a scientist. I can apply them very easily to brewing. Brewers, in fact, don't make beer. So all my job at the brewery is to run 2 microbiology experiments, basically. What we do is we add hot water to my grain at a certain temperature, which optimizes the conditions for some enzymes in the grain to break down the long chain starches into simpler sugars. That's called the mashing process. That liquid that comes out of the grain then goes into a fermenter. So then I add yeast to that sugary solution, and the second experiment is I control the conditions in which the yeast consumes the sugar and turns that liquid into beer and carbon dioxide. Beer is generally made up of 3 components in terms of its flavour and aroma. The first is generated by the malt profile, so how sweet the beer is and what the body of the beer is. The second is by the hop profile, which is the bitterness and the aromatics that are coming off the beer. And then the third is the yeast profile. So you tend to get people who like malty beers, like me. So you think of stouts, brown ales. Then you've got, in the middle, you've got the hoppier beers. So American pale ales, India pale ales, those kind of things that are very trendy at the moment. And they're sort of characterised by the very aromatic chemicals that are coming off the hops. And then you get the people who really like the yeasty beers. So the one that people would mostly remember is Hoegaarden. So the cloudy white beer, so that's got yeast in suspension, and a lot of the flavour and the aroma is for yeast. The best beer might be the perfect blend of those 3 things, but it's down to taste. We rescued, if you like, a lot of equipment and turned it into a brewery. So all of our vessels, we have 3 vessels in what's called the brew house, and we have 3 big fermenters. They're all old milk vats from dairy farms that we rescued when the dairy farms closed down. So they're very high quality food grade stainless steel. The cool room that we use to chill our water and to keep the beer cold, we rescued it from a butcher shop that closed down in Albany and dragged it up here and rebuilt it. And we have a big mill that we use to crack our grain open before we brew. And we got that from a horse stud that was closing down. During the daytime, we're completely solar powered. We have a 15 kilowatt solar system that runs and produces more power than we need. But what we do is we actually turn all of our refrigeration, including the cool room, off at night, and then the cool room effectively keeps itself cold overnight because, as well as the beer that we have in there, we fill it with these really big water tanks. So we've got 5,000 litres of cold water in there. So when the sun's up, the cool room runs, it cools 5 tonnes of water for me during the daytime. The sun goes down, the power turns off, and those thermal batteries, they then keep the cool room cold all night long until the sun comes back up again, turns the cool room back on, cools the water down, and it goes again. We don't have any solid waste. Everything that we produce at the end of a brew is now a productive byproduct. All of our grain that we've extracted the sugars out of for the brewing process, that goes to a chicken farmer. Some of the grain we take and we turn it into dog biscuits. So the lucky dogs who come to the brewery on the weekend, they can get these little dog biscuits made out of spent grain from the brewing process. And all of our spent hops and spent yeast, they're very good as a soil amendment. So we give them to the local community garden and they put them in their compost heaps, or they put it in their veggie patch and mix it in and turn it into cabbages and tomatoes and that kind of stuff. So solid waste, nothing comes out of here. And then we have a very low water footprint as well. What I find fascinating is how, based on varieties of ingredients over time, through seasons, across different years, my recipes that I think I know exactly how it's going to turn out doesn't quite turn out like that. So there's all of these things that I don't really control. You know, the sugar content in the malt, the moisture content in the malt, the alpha, the beta acids in the hops. It's never routine. I'll do the same thing each time, but it can change from day to day. So I quite like that. I also really like the fact that we continue to problem solve here, because I made the brewery, I built it all. So if something breaks down, I fix it. It's kind of a great right brain, left brain thing. So you've got to be a little bit creative in coming up with recipes and thinking, imagining how things are going to turn out. And then you've got to be science-minded to make sure you do that the same all the time, or that you do it properly and you control the processes. So that left brain, right brain thing is really good for me. I enjoy doing that.
Mark has used his environmental science knowledge to not only turn a passion into a business, but design brewing systems and technology that reduces waste and minimises the impact his business has on the environment. This entrepreneurial thinking and scientific approach has allowed Three Rivers Brewing Company to become a sustainable brewery and, of course, produce delicious beers.